What is up, everybody? I'm No Lex Given here with your afternoon snap, and today we are taking a look at the games that got me to infinite this season in Marvel Snap, starting off with a game that leads with Nova Roma, which is fitting because I started playing this deck when Nova Roma was the featured location last week, and I loved this list so much that I've been playing it ever since. And like 2 days after that, I hit Galactic rank, and the day after that, I hit Infinite. So that's what we're gonna take a look at today, the 11 games that I played on my way to Infinite rank. But if you wanna see some more gameplay with this exact deck list, I've got 3 other videos right here that you can check out on my channel as well. Plus, I'm sure I'll have some more coming in the future, and I've got a whole bunch more Galactus gameplay with pretty similar lists on my channel as well. But this is the current iteration with Absorbing Man and Black Widow. Those are the newest additions to the deck that I've really been enjoying. I brought up some of the justifications for some of these cards, but I like Black Widow in terms of denying my opponent potential options to try to counter me, and I also didn't really want to play Professor X anymore because of Jeff the baby land shark. Because Jeff was everywhere, or not everywhere, just Jeff being a brand new card, I figured some people might have Jeff in their lists, so trying to lock down lanes isn't as important anymore. But we're still gonna see what kind of silliness we can get up to in this game, and to finish this one off on turn 5, even though Jeff kind of makes Spider-Man and lane lockdown a little bit awkward, it will still limit my opponent's options slightly. So for this final turn of the game, or not final turn, penultimate turn of the game, I'm gonna play Spider-Man plus Wave, just to limit the options my opponent has on the final turn. And Wave is really interesting here. With Wave plus Elysium, everybody will be able to play 2 cards on the final turn, but I'll be able to play a 3rd card because I can play Death for free. And I'm gonna need that. I only have cards in one location, only have cards over in the Collapsed Mine, but I still think I'm gonna have enough power to bring it out here. Shang-Chi doesn't really matter because I can just now play Null for 10 power, and I can still play America Chavez and Death, so I can add 31 power to the board on this final turn. That's pretty good, I think, but let's see if it is enough. I'm gonna check that out with Kang. I was also taking a look to see which of my opponent's cards were potentially Moon Girled, to see what they could potentially have in their hand. Would they have another Shang-Chi by any chance? And looks like my opponent's play for the turn is gonna be Jeff into the Collapsed Mine plus Polaris, and I'm expecting my opponent to make this exact same play, actually. I think that they're still gonna move over Jeff and just ensure that win in the Collapsed Mine, and then drop Polaris into the Goose location. And as long as they make that exact same play, we'll be able to beat them in the Collapsed Mine with America Chavez, where we'll be greater than 13 power. That'll get us up to 15 power. So we'll just barely beat them in the Collapsed Mine, and then 22 power into Elysium. Sneaking under that Goose should be able to grab a win there as well. Let's see, does my opponent wind up making the same play? Looks like it. They're gonna hit me with the double Jeff and Polaris, but we're gonna add 31 power to the board on this final turn and grab the win. So as you can see, this nets me 4 cubes and puts me up to rank 98. One thing that's kind of interesting right now is that Infinite players will only play against other Infinite players, which means non-Infinite players have a smaller pool of players to play against, especially as the season goes on and more players level up to Infinite. So for that reason, it's really important to pay attention to the names of people you're playing against and exactly what decks that they're playing, because as you'll see in this video, I wind up playing against Fudgesicles here 3 times from rank 98 on my way to rank 100. So definitely worth paying attention to exactly what your opponents are playing in case you wind up playing up against them again. In this one, I'm going to drop Electro into Vormir, and they are just going to throw Widow's Bite away in Vormir. That makes sense. And then they'll play a Time Stone, and what else do they have in Atlantis? Okay, a Lizard. So they've got a nice little priority lead. Armor in Murder World, so that's kind of interesting. And to be honest, I don't really think that I do anything fantastic in this one. Yeah, I just dropped Doc Ock into Atlantis, which they have now Reality Stoned into Fisk Tower, but then they Shang-Chi me and Cosmo me. I really just don't have anything else going on in my hand. I never draw Galactus or Null here. I play Kang and I snap just to apply like a little bit of pressure, but honestly it's not gonna get me too much. I'm just gonna wind up retreating and losing a cube. The very next game I actually wind up playing against the same player, and we've got a much better hand this time with the curve of Electro into Doc Ock and then Null and Death to round out the game. We just need Galactus, which I'm able to draw on turn 5, so feeling pretty good. Dark Dimension does make things a little bit awkward because we can't Galactus to that location, so my opponent actually does have a pretty good play here. They snap on turn 4 with 5 energy because of Time Stone, and they have Professor X. Now, if they had just Professored into Kunlun, then they would have won that location and we wouldn't have been able to play Galactus anywhere. But now we are able to play Galactus with priority into Kunlun, and then we'll be able to drop Death and Null and all sorts of fun stuff on the final turn of the game for the win. So it does seem like this one will be pretty straightforward. We can also see exactly what Galactus destroys here. With the Null, looks like we destroyed something for 3 power, so maybe like their armor and their Power Stone, potentially. Cosmo is their card in Kunlun here, and then for 4 cubes, I have to imagine my opponent is just going to retreat. But still, we lost 1 and then gained 4, so we're up 3. In this game, we've got turn 2 Black Widow into turn 3 Wave, and then I draw Kang for the turn, so I'm able to draw a card deeper by playing Kang this turn, while also seeing what my opponent's plan is during this Wave turn. And they are just looking to play Leader, which I think actually serves me pretty well. Leader in the Raft makes a lot of sense. You could potentially grab a free card there. So I think they're going to continue to play to the Raft. And sometimes in a scenario like this, you would Galactus elsewhere, so that way your opponent blows up, so that way you blow up more cards and have a cheaper death. But in this scenario, I'm just Galactusing into the Raft because now my opponent's Raft is almost full, and they won't get anything to do with the free card that they play there. So we're gonna Doc Ock, make them fully bunked in that location, and then we should be able to win the game with Chavez on the final turn, since they've got 3 cards there, but only 4 power. And we'll see that this game is pretty straightforward. We wind up dragging out a Stature, and we've already won. In this game, we give my opponent a Black Widow, a Widow's Bite, and a Wave. They haven't played any cards yet, well, other than the Widow's Bite, but they have 3 cards on their side of the field. So I can Galactus anywhere. I don't have to worry about Arrow or Magneto or anything like that. I am going to Kang and Snap just to see what my opponent might be thinking about doing before we blow up this Galactus. But in this instance, and I will just fast forward, I think they might not even play anything here. Oh, they play a Dracula into the Oscorp Tower. Makes sense. Okay, so I probably want to dodge that Dracula because that's a card that can continue to add power to the board even after we lock down their location with like Spider-Man, which is the plan here, to go Galactus into Spider-Man. So just hoping that they continue to play to the Oscorp Tower. It does make sense to play Dracula at that location, and then I'm gonna Galactus and blow it all up. And this will make our death a little bit cheaper. It won't really make our Null any bigger because we've only blown up 4 power worth of cards, despite Dracula potentially being a lot of power. It doesn't have any power yet, and then I'm just gonna play a turn 5 Spider-Man, and that should be enough to make my opponent retreat. Let's skip ahead, see what they got. They've got Wasp plus Leech, so we don't get to play Death, but they don't get to play anything at all. This game is a little bit of a bummer. A few different things go wrong. First off, we've got Machine World, which means we can't use Black Widow. If we give my opponent a Widow's Bite, they'll be able to send it right back to me in Machine World, so I just never want to play Black Widow at all. And then our second location is Gamma Lab, which that can be a good one for this deck if we draw Electro. We don't wind up drawing Electro, but we do draw Wave. So we can play Wave into the Gamma Lab, that'll give us a Hulk, and then maybe we could blow up their Hulks with Shang-Chi and make a big null. So there's definitely still some cool ways yet to turn this game in our favor. However, my opponent storms the Gamma Lab, which means nobody's getting a Hulk, which means my null is potentially useless, and all around just makes this a really weird game. Now, I do think I'll be able to win the flooded location if I just play Death there. I could play Doc Ock to potentially leave Galactus open as a draw, or Absorbing Man, so that way if I draw Galactus next turn, I can still play it. And then I think that was my snap, wasn't it? Let me rewind that back just a little bit. No, that's my opponent's snap. You can tell if the snap is red, that means it's, well, most people know this because they're playing the games themselves, but if you're ever watching somebody play, if the snap is red, that means it was the opposing player, and if the snap is blue, that means that they snapped. So sometimes I forget who snapped. I was like, I don't think I'm snapping here as I drop Death into this flooded location, but then my opponent also has Debris. So that is going to prevent Galactus from doing anything else even further. I'm going to snap here as I play Kang. We also have priority, so I know that this Kang isn't going to get Cosmoed or anything. I'm just hoping that maybe the fact that I won the flooded location can kind of scare my opponent off a little bit, but no, they're just going to keep playing. They drop their blue Marvel and continue to add power across the board. They are unfazed, and they're gonna see potentially if they could still win this flooded location maybe, but I'm just gonna drop Doc Ock into the Crimson Cosmos, and then, I don't know, hope that I can figure out something from there. And we'll see, my opponent actually makes an interesting play this turn. Might have to skip ahead a little bit. They drop, well, they don't drop their blue Marvel. We take out their blue Marvel with Dr. Octopus, and instead, they're gonna play Patriot, they're going to play Squirrel Girl, and they are going to finish off with the Wasp. And what is really, really awkward here is I can't actually win the Crimson Cosmos. For a second, I thought that I could. I was like, oh, if I play Patriot plus Squirrel Girl, will I be able to then, because that'll give me 5 more power in the Crimson Cosmos. The Squirrel for 3, and then the Rock. So yeah, it's just awkward that I'm like just barely not able to take my opponent in the Cosmos, so there's no way to win this game, and I have to retreat. This game, we don't find any good locations. The first location is Luke's Bar, which, because I cut Professor X from the deck, there's no real way for me to win there. Second location is Bar with No Name, which also isn't great. I'm not playing Hobgoblin or any real consistent ways to add negative power. And then location number 3 is Shadowland. So I can't Galactus there either, meaning that I really only have one option. I have to Galactus into Bar with No Name, and then hope that Doc Ock is able to win me that location by grabbing a bunch of power from my opponent's hand. There is one other kind of potential option, that Null could have negative power because of the ninjas from Shadowland, and nothing else is on this board with the fact that Wave returns Luke's Bar to my opponent's hand. So maybe there's still some possibilities here, though after Galactus blows up everything this turn, taking my opponent's death with it, we're going to have even fewer potential ways to win, because now Doc Ock also can't drag in my opponent's death. So this is going to get a little bit tricky. It also makes my null a little bit bigger. I have 2 plays here. The first is to snap and play Kang and hope that maybe that will threaten the win and scare my opponent off of playing to the location, but all I can really do here is play Doc Ock and hope that my opponent surprisingly puts enough power in. One thing that my opponent can do here that's pretty cool, if they have Shang-Chi, they should play it so that way Doc Ock doesn't grab their Shang-Chi, at which point I will definitely win. But we just have to hope they don't play Shang-Chi. They didn't play it on the Kang turn, so maybe they won't play it on this second version of the turn, and they don't. Let's see if it's in their hand though, or what else they potentially have. Wave, okay, that's not gonna do enough. Death, okay, so we won, as long as they don't destroy it and destroy their whole board. Let's see what their last card is, Galactus, and obviously that does nothing. So we get the win for 2 more cubes. So now I am up to rank 99, and we've got a nice little curve this game with Electro into Dr. Octopus and some interesting locations for Doc Ock too. I'm gonna throw Electro into Muir Island just because it gives me a little bit extra power, could help me get priority later on into the game, which can always be nice. And we'll see that my opponent throws down a wave into the Avengers compound. We've got 2 really good options here. We can either Doc Ock in Avengers compound because then my opponent won't be able to play there next turn, or we can Doc Ock into Hala and either blow up my cards or blow up my opponent's cards. It doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter, actually, because my opponent is going to play Galactus and just blow everything up. So maybe I should have thrown the Doc Ock into Muir Island, but what can you do? I don't even know if that would have been necessarily a great play. Probably would have been decent, though, because then my opponent would be unable to play for the rest of the game. They're still not going to be able to play next turn because we're going to Spider-Man them on this turn. And even if my opponent has Spider-Man here, we win. So I'm snapping back. I'm hoping that this is just like a double Spider-Man, that they don't play anything too crazy this turn. But even if they play like Professor or Dr. Octopus of their own, we're still kind of covered. We've got a really strong hand. Looks like it is Doc Ock. We've got Shang-Chi. Yep, we hit the Shang-Chi. We don't get the death or the null, but we're still going to have a ton of power just because of Muir Island, and then, of course, Shang-Chi blowing up my opponent's only play. So for 4 cubes there, we are now up to 99.4. My opponent's going to wind up retreating, and we are very, very close to hitting infinite. 2 more games here to round out the video, and I said we'd be seeing 3 games against Fudgesicles. So here is the final game, the rubber match, because we're currently 1-1, though I am up 3 cubes against them. So I guess I'm winning if you put it in some Marvel Snap perspectives there. Mind Stone is going to be my opponent's play on turn 1, and then Daily Bugle will give me a Reality Stone, which is a card that I haven't gotten to play with too much, but there's a lot of power there for just 1 energy, and I'm going to throw Reality Stone into Daily Bugle. There's a lot of really cool locations for this deck, and I want to see as many locations as possible, so I'm just going to run out this Reality Stone and hope to find something really, really cool, like Rickety Bridge or Strange Academy. Both are really, really good locations when you've got Spider-Man and Galactus in your deck. X-Mansion is the location on turn 3, so that's not a great one for me. I'm just going to throw up my Electro there. We can see that Reality Stone changed it to Atlantis. Not super happy about that. Neither is my opponent, apparently, and they are going to change that to Grand Central, which is honestly another one that I'm not super excited about. But now my opponent is fully bunked up in X-Mansion. They have filled that location, and Doctor Doom means that they have now also filled themselves in the Grand Central. So I'm gonna snap. 2 locations are already full, and that means I should probably be able to win. I mean, I think I just win if I drop Dr. Octopus into Grand Central here, but I'm gonna drop Doc Ock into the Crimson Cosmos, so that way my opponent is totally locked out. I don't have to worry about like a late game Killmonger potentially opening this game up and doing something weird. I think we're just gonna be able to lock it down with the Doctor right now, and my opponent, in hindsight, this is a really weird play from them. But what my opponent goes for here on turn 4 is Professor X. So they are going to lock down the Crimson Cosmos, and they're going to lock it down, unfortunately for them, in our favor. So we'll be able to take the win for 2 more cubes. With that, I just need 4 more cubes, and I will be infinite. We're very, very close. I can taste it here, and Camartage is going to be our first location in this game. I'm going to breeze through it a little bit. My opponent uses Reality Stone to give us a Sokovia, which discards my Spider-Man, their Captain America, and then I double Black Widow them. So I'm going to leave my opponent with not too much space on the board, and then Sanctum Sanctorum shows up. So my opponent is really, really hurting for space here, and that is going to be rough on them. They're just going to drop double Widow's Bite, and then I'm going to wave into Camartage here on turn 4. And then We'll see what they can come up with. Looks like nothing for this turn. I draw Absorbing Man off the top. I think just Death is probably enough. I'm even considering Kang here, though, by the looks of it. You could also just Absorbing Man, wave one more time, but my plan here is just to play Death and then play Chavez off the top next turn. Nothing particularly crazy, but my opponent has a Professor X, and we sneak in and get the Death in there. So now they can't Shang-Chi my Death, and we're winning across the board. I know America's going to bring us home here. I drop Kang just to see what my opponent has. They wind up retreating anyways, and we are now 3 cubes off of infinite, but that's basically the same thing as being 4 away. In this game, my opponent and I pass each other some cards in Machine World that we're hoping that we can't use. I'm hoping that they can't really make great use of a wave in their Angela deck, and then they're hoping that I can't make great use of a Mr. Negative or an Ironheart. And they're right. It was a pretty nice play there. I was just playing Kang to see if they had any sort of interaction, and my guess is that they probably don't. So I'm just going to drop Galactus, and we can just drop that into New York. Seems fine as any other place, and then we will blow up the other location. So I do believe I will snap here, yes, before revealing this Galactus, and I have to imagine my opponent is still going to go with this Mr. Negative on turn 4. From there, I'm just going to play Dr. Octopus on turn 5. One of the reasons that I really like Dr. Octopus is because it will give my opponent less time to draw flipped cards off of Mr. Negative. My opponent pivots there in terms of where they play their Mr. Negative, but it's still going to get blown up by Galactus all the same, contribute to a cheaper Death, and Octopus plus Death should be enough to win this game, assuming my opponent doesn't draw like a flipped Iron Man this turn exactly, because that could put me in a little bit of trouble, but like short of exactly that, I think that we are in a pretty nice position to win this one. So let's see what the doc drops if my opponent decides to play anything for turn. Looks like they do play 1 card for turn, and we're going to make them play a Blue Marvel, my wave that I gave them, and the final card here being Iron Man, but not flipped, which is super important. They already had Iron Man in their hand. Their final card is going to be Sarah. So I just have to beat 28 power, which is a lot of power. But what's absolutely clutch here is the fact that I gave my opponent my wave, which now means I also get to play Death for free for 21 power on this final turn. That'll put me up to 33. If I didn't give them wave and then grab their wave with Doc Ock, I would have been in a tough spot. But now, well, wave plus Sarah, yeah, maybe just no, Sarah alone wouldn't have done it because Death would have costed 4 and Chavez would have costed 5. But because of the wave, I'm able to drop them both and grab the win, securing myself infinite for the April season. Really nicely done. That was a really fun game to actually get infinite as well. That's always nice when that individual game is good. And we'll finish it out here by looking at the new infinite card back. There it is. I'm just going to switch to this setup so that you can see that screen in all of its glory. Infinite Team Cat. There we go. I'll claim that, and that's going to be it for me today. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm No Lex Given. Peace.